Hello, thank you for joining us in this session of RE Connect. Today we'll be talking about Real Estate 6.0 challenges and solutions. I've chosen this subject this time because every time anyone talks about Real Estate 6.0 or any part of it, they would be talking about liquefying assets, tokenization, or any other part of it, and then what dominates the conversation is challenges. Everyone would be talking about the challenges that cannot be sorted in people's eyes. I've been writing about this for the last 5 to 6 years. So prior to me coming up with the Real Estate 6.0, I have been studying and writing and thinking about challenges and possible and probable solutions. So I would say I theoretically yes, but practically have found answers and solutions to most of the challenges. I wouldn't claim that I have the solutions to all the challenges, but I found solutions to most of what you and I would be faced with tomorrow morning. And I've picked few of those challenges to talk about today. I first want to talk about tokenization in the industry's eyes, in the stakeholders' eyes, and in the pros in tokenization's eyes. How do we think of it? How do we look at it? How do we think it's possible? And where do I believe we need to change our thoughts to be able to have that adopted and the technology adapted properly? Second, I want to talk about management and returns distribution, because that's a major part of owning a property, and specifically when you have it in a format of a token, or you own it in a format of a token, managing it and creating returns and a return cycle is very important. Liabilities, because every time we talk about this, somebody comes up and says, you know what, who will hold the liability if there is a liability on the asset? Who will hold the liability if there is a liability created on the asset? And that's a very major challenge that needs to be covered today. And finally, we will talk about the cost of the transaction. And this relates to the first point again. How do we make it possible the right way and available to the public in a simple manner and a secure manner? Because if we want to issue tokens and make it simply a commercial product that is widely interesting for people and widely adopted, we would need to make it very simple and very secure. Otherwise, we're selling a financial product, and a financial product which is less secure than traditional financial product, or looked at as less secure than traditional financial products. So this is a major thing we have. The last point I want to talk about today is being able to speak to the masses and being able to communicate the idea of Real Estate 6.0 or the future of the asset class to the masses, and at the same time protecting the masses, because legislators are afraid that if we do what we're talking about today, we'll end up in a mess of a market where there is no stability in housing, and housing is one of the stability elements in a community. So it's major and very important that that stability is created. Post this session, the next session, I promise you, will be about a very intriguing subject as well. It's how do we have tokens floating on an open market? How would you buy a token of property tomorrow? Similar to how you buy a share, an Apple stock today, a Berkshire Hathaway stock today, and the likes. So let's start. Let's go ahead with the first. And please feel free to throw your questions on the side. I welcome them. I welcome challenging the ideas that are being put forward. This is why we're here. And what we're presenting is just an intriguing thought, as we said. What we're presenting is just something that will hopefully make you think, to develop or challenge. Develop on the idea that we're putting forward, or challenge the idea that I'm putting forward, and hopefully together we'll establish if the idea is strong enough, can hold water or not. Then we both work on changing it and making it a better idea. Let's start with tokenization. How do we think of tokenization? We look at tokenization today and you talk to people who are in that business, who are in the business of tokenization, and you will hear from them that what we will do is we will take the asset owned by Makram, owned by Mike, and we will keep it owned by Makram or Mike. Yet, what we will change in it is we will create a contract between Mike, the owner, and a management company or a tokenizing company or a platform where the platform can issue tokens and those resemble ownership in the property. Now, you ask them, will there be transfer of title? And they tell you no. And this is a major hurdle here. Why? When you buy a property today, when your father, your grandfather, my grandmother buy a property today, they purchase a very secure asset in their opinion. They purchase an asset that's secured by a document that's registered in the land registry. Today, in Dubai, for example, that document is not anymore a green paper. It's blockchain driven, and you get it encrypted and secured and registered in the land registry. So why can't we, tomorrow morning, register rather than 100% of a property in a land registry, register 1%, 0.5%, 1 token, 10 tokens, 50 tokens, whatever they resemble of ownership of property? We can. There is challenges, there's barriers to get there. Some of it is cost barriers, some of it is legislative barriers, and that's why we need to work all together to sort those issues. However, unless we do sort that out, we will not be able to achieve that kind of seamless transacting and adoption. That kind of mass interest where every average Joe is interested in the property we're talking about. Every average Joe is interested in buying it, keeping it, holding it, trading it, getting return from it, and feel secure enough to do so. Where we're not offering a financial product, what we are offering is a property. It's exactly the property everyone knows. That creates exactly the returns of property everyone knows. However, is owned and secured by a title deed. So the first item is create a process with legislators to be able to issue tokens that have underlying assets that aren't floating, that are fixed. Because Mike or Makram, if they decide to sell the asset they have a contract on, you don't need to go to court to claim that he have attempted fraud or he have done fraud, gone on with fraud. You have just to make sure that this asset, this token, resembles an underlying registered asset where no one can sell and no one can trade unless you do. This is point number one. Point number two is liability. So every time we talk about tokenizing, we talk about real estate 6.0, and tokenizing is a small part of it. We talk about liability and returns. So who will handle the liability? Who will manage the property? And how will the returns be distributed? How are the returns, guys, distributed today if you own an Apple stock? Again, if you own an Apple stock, there is quarterly or there is profit distribution based on a certain metric that is accepted and understood by everyone. And if we say real estate 6.0 is all about not only liquefying the asset, but making it more transparent, where you can see an order book and an order wheel. And then when we talk next time about having it on an open market and floating those tokens on an open market, which I believe, although we're not yet there in the school of thought publicly, but this is where we should be. To float it on an open market and have that kind of transparency with an order book and an order wheel, and you see exactly what is sold and how much is it sold for and what can be sold in the future, and the graphs of the price changes and the variance. When we have that, or to have that, we need to create certain metrics and similar metrics, starting by management, reaching returns, and going through liability. Let's start with management. Management today of property done by professional management companies can be of great effectiveness. If that property purchased is under a management contract by a professional, internationally recognized company that's properly audited, where the asset is audited as well, we can have those returns at very low cost achieved and distributed. So I'm a fan first, as you see, of security of that customer. That token holder, that real estate purchaser is secure. It's simple. He purchases the token in a very simple way, similar to how he purchases any stock today, but even easier sometimes. And then he is able to collect the returns either on a quarterly or on a semi-annually or on an annual basis, based on certain metrics, as we said, that's clear to everyone. Now, how will the returns be distributed? How are the dividends distributed today? Why can't returns be distributed in the same way? Again, we have many other solutions to distribute returns, similar to issuing more tokens. Okay, you don't need to distribute returns today through fiat currency or any other digital format of currency. There is a very easy way to distribute returns. Now, and there's plenty of ways. One of them is distributing more tokens. Another is distributing an alternative token that relates to the main token with the underlying asset under it, where the alternative token does not resemble an asset, resembles cash that is in escrow against it, where it can be exchanged or for people who believe that we're beyond fiat or we will be beyond fiat soon, which I'm not a believer of at this point of time. For whoever believes that that can be in any other cryptocurrency, although I believe that it will be in some other format of solid coin or digital currency that is regulated maybe, or that relates to a country's currency, and that's how people would understand it and get it simplified to them. So we will pass through transitional periods to get there, but the thought today of every tokenizer in the world and every tokenization expert that we can have a floating asset or an asset that is secured by a contract is not, to me. I wouldn't buy a property that's owned by Mike and I get a contract for it. No, I need the title deed of that property for me to buy that property. So that's crucial. At the same time, I will need a metric on how is it managed and how much is the cost of management by a company that is audited, where the asset is audited and the money sits in escrow and is distributed to all of us, to me and you. Liability. So some people ask, what if at the time of ownership of this property, there is liability that has been created or has been seen? Let's say the property gets vacant in a rough market, it doesn't get rented, and there's costs attached to it. There's several solutions, guys, for this. Insurance is one of those solutions. There's insurance products that can be tailor-made for such a product. Remember, we're talking now about the biggest asset class in the world. And if we create real estate 6.0 and we make it the future of the asset class, it will come anyway. We are sure that insurers will jump on it and will say, let's secure your property from every side. Similar to how they issue you property insurance today, they may issue you return insurance today or loss of revenue insurance today. There's several kinds of ways to secure that return and reduce the possibility of a liability. But at the end, there is an underlying asset that may be considered a liability or may generate the liability at the time. When that asset generates the liability, we can have cash reserves for it, and that also can be done by the management company that can be audited and sits in escrow, or at the same time, it can be a hybrid of both, have insurance against that so that everyone is secured, so that your token does not resemble a loss of value. However, also there are solutions that relate to that are within the blockchain world today. DeFi is or can produce a solution for that. How? When you have a liability to a non-performing asset, you need money to cover that liability. and you can secure that money through decentralized financing. And then there will be a liability that's hanging on the property so that in the future, when the property earns, it pays back that liability. I hope that those points are clear for you. And again, I welcome you challenging those points or thinking with me about them. And on the side, you can find a window where you can submit your chat. Feel free also to send me a message at any moment of time. I'm always available to answer it. You can message simply my email or go through my website and get through to me, makramhani.com. Now, the ability of us securing the returns, as we said, is simpler than we think. The stability of the market is what we need to think of at the same time, because legislators will care about that. But before that, we need to talk about costs. What are the costs related today to transferring a property? It ranges between 1% in some countries and 15-20% in others. I believe that is easily sortable. Today, land departments and authorities, yes, do worry about losing revenue. If the property, for example, in UAE today, in Dubai, a property transfers and the property buyer pays 2%, seller pays 2%, or practically, because that's the practice, the buyer pays the 4%. That 4% fee goes to land department. Now, the 4% today resembles the 4% of the entirety of the property. First thought is that it can resemble 4% of that portion of the property, the value of the token. Yet, land department today may, and land departments all over the world, may consider to lessen this expense if presented to them right, and if they have seen the benefit to them and to the industry and to the country. How? When we talk today about a land department, and when we talk today about the revenues generated, we talk about a property that transacts once every few years, depending on the market, how liquid the market is, and how volatile the market is. It transacts once every few years. A token may transact once every few months, or once every few days, or once or few times in a day even. This resembles a higher volume of transactions. In other words, if we take an average and we look at that average and we say, rather than you transacting once every 4 years or every 10 years with a transaction cost of 4%, if you split that over the 10 years or the 4 years and over the months, let's say because there's a transaction average of 30 times a year or 30 times in the 4 years, and then split it by 30, you will get a small fraction of that cost as a real cost per transaction, per trade of a token. And this is something that is possible. This is something that, yes, maybe the financial regulator would need to look at, as well as the land registries and land departments and the regulator of property ownership and trading and sales. However, this is possible and this is logical, and logically it will earn more money, and logically it will be even paid in a very simple way, similar to how you pay the financial regulator today every time, or the stock market today, every time there is a trade of a stock. That happens. There can be a spread that can be there. So those solutions are not solutions that we need to recreate. There is currently asset classes that are resembled or that are sold in small portions, in small shares. And there's solutions that guide all of those. We can adopt the same solutions. Yes, we can have more restrictions to protect the market. Now, those restrictions may be global or may be local. There's some markets today that you can't buy in unless you're a local. Yeah? There's some stock markets. So if you want to say, you know what, I want to protect the market in Toronto from very bad fluctuations in price, how would you be able to do that? You would be able to do that in different ways. One of the ways you'd be able to do that is you would be able to create a regulation that restricts trading of tokens in that specific market. You will be able to raise the cost of trading in that specific market. You will be able to change the rules of distribution of profit in that specific market. And that's for the regulator to do. Now, again, the fans of the non-regulated, decentralized, fully decentralized and non-regulated setup are there. I'm not one of them. I would say we always would need guidelines. Those guidelines can be through protocols, or those guidelines can be through governments. It doesn't matter. As long as the guidelines are clear and available, that is the main important point in it. I thank you for joining me at this session. I tried to make it as short as possible and as non-boring as possible. Again, I hope that I have produced an intriguing thought, and I hope that that thought would help you develop and create beyond the thought that we're talking about, so that we can reach the ultimate asset class, because we can all benefit from a property that's more liquid. We can all benefit from having a property that is easy to buy and sell, and we can have much benefit from a property that does not need to be bought in lump sums of big cash. It can be bought in portions. Thank you for joining. Thank you for UNISO for this great initiative again, and I hope that you enjoyed and you enjoy the rest of the sessions. Ciao.